Hello, Corinne Celestine here. I had lots of people asking for another film, so I thought I'd do one on needles and felting mats today. So this is me. I write children's books featuring my little animals, and I make little animals like these, and I have a little shed, and I couldn't show you me last time because it won't let you see, so I don't know if you can see me because all I could find was this little weird mirror from outside. So here I am. You can't really see, but I have half blue hair and half not dyed hair and a bit short because I sit in my shed. I can do what I want. That's me. Okay, so here's my messy shed. Somebody said it was really messy and I was laughing because I tidied up specially. And here's my felting desk where I make things, and I've got needles and I've got some pad things to show you as well, except I'm going to sit on one of them. So hopefully this will work and you won't go sideways this time. And I'm going to put you in here. If you fit, there's a little slot there. So there's a couple of badges. And there's a half-made weasel. I went and looked at here's needles and their holders, and here's all my needles in a big box there, and then I did a sort out of all the ones that I've got here. There are more, but these are the ones that I've got, and it kind of made me laugh because when I first started felting, years and years ago, I used to do wet felting and they didn't really have needles, and I remember this was about in 2001 I think. A friend of mine said to me, do you know they've invented this thing called a felting needle, and it's really good because it can fix your wet felting. So I went to have a look and I got one. I thought, well, that's brilliant. It wasn't about sculptures or anything then. And what you got was a thing like this from Wing and Woolwork. I didn't know anywhere else that sold them. And you got one needle in it, and it was a needle. And that was kind of it. So for years and years and years, I felted with this, which I've now discovered is a 38. And I think it's a 38 triangle. But that's what I felted with, and I did everything with this one single needle, and I didn't know any different, and it was fine. And I think this is the thing about needles, is that, you know, you get people saying, oh, I don't know which needle to use and all of that, and there are loads of different needles now, and some people are really fussy, and some people say, oh, I can only use this needle, and I can't possibly work with this needle, and you must have this quality needle, and you must do this, and you must do that. And I'm afraid for me it doesn't work like that. To be honest, some of the needles I can't tell the difference between. I've got tons of needles. If you look here, this is a box of just random ones that they're still usable. I just sort of get them out and then I can't remember which is which. And to be honest, they're all fine. So I might be a little bit unpopular with some people because I think some of you will be going, oh my goodness, you know, you have to have this particular holder and you have to have a 38 star twisted blah blah blah. There are differences and some of them are useful, but if you're starting out, what I'd really recommend that you do is go to a company that sells a selection of different needles and buy a few of each. Well, just buy one of each, get a selection kit, and try them out and see which ones you like the feel of. I've met people who can only use a 42 in a 4 holder, and people who can only use a single needle and only a 32. And I mean, you know, it's what works for you. So all you really need is a needle. Now, I'm not sure how much we can see on here, but if you look, basically they have a little hook at one end, and if you look along here they have little barbs on them, little bits that stick out, and those little barbs, they catch the little scales and fibres that are on the wool, and the barbs are all facing in that direction, so as you poke in they catch the fibres and it's smooth on the way out. So that hurts when it goes through your finger, and it doesn't hurt quite so much when it comes out. I go through the top of this finger quite a lot, but it's kind of it's got a bit tough now. Try not to stick them in your fingers. And this one is one I found that's actually quite thick, because I thought it would be useful to show you. I think you can just see the little dips there that show the barbs. It's a bit hard to see. So they have these little barbs, and they have different numbers of sides. So usually they have 3, which is a triangle, but you can also get ones that are called star that have more sides. I think they've got 4, but to be honest, I've tried counting and I can't. Every time I look, I think, oh, have I counted that side? I think it's 4 sides, but anyway, the stars have got more sides, and usually there's 2 or 3 barbs. If you run your finger down, you can sort of feel them. And that gives you, I'm just going to try something here. There, I think you can see them. Those little notches are the little barbs in it. I've got a magnifying glass here, so you can sort of see them as you spin it round. And they're what do the work. And you can get anything from a needle that's got 1 barb in it to a needle that's got, I think 8 or 9 is the most that you get, because you get, say, 3 on each side, or so anyway, they have different numbers of barbs on them, different numbers of sides, and different thicknesses. Now I think the thickness is the bit that you really notice. So usually they're in numbers. The really annoying thing is that a lot of them are color coded, but each company has their own color codes. So World of Wool, I think it's blue or green for 38, but then here I've got a Heidi Feathers one that's red, and there's another black one there, but I've also got black needles that are 36s, so it's really confusing. Most companies will give you a card that has, I've got one here. This is the Heidi Feathers card, and it lists what the colours are and what they are. So they go from, regular stars, reverse twisted, crowns, forked. Ignore the forked. You don't need that for needle felting, I don't think. That's quite handy, and I can only show you that one because that's the only card I've got. World of Wool are quite good in that they come in sort of coloured end tubes, so you can remember that, these are 36 with the black, and these are 38s, but then they have actually sent me 38 triangle ones in a green before now. So, and then sometimes you get something like this, that there are companies that sell kits and things that these come from China, and basically you get a little tube and there's no numbers or no colours or anything, and they're random needles. They're actually fine. I don't find them a problem. The problem I find is some kits give you a massively fat needle, and that's what I think is difficult. So felting needle, you get fat, thick ones and thin ones. Let's have a look if I show you the difference here. So I don't know if you can see, because it's not the easiest thing to show you, and excuse my grubby fingers, but this one is a lot thicker than this one. So this will work faster, and it will kind of felt more than this one, but obviously it's going to be a lot rougher when it's working. So this is much better for fine detail, and if you were starting from the beginning, this would take ages to kind of do anything because it's so thin. And actually this one, it only has like 1 little barb on the end of it. All of this is smooth. You get to there and there's 1 barb on this needle. So that's for very, very super fine work at the very end. This one's a bit more roughy-tufty. So you get a needle, and you can just get your needle and use it as it is. I find, because I do this for a living, these fingers are starting to lose their feeling a little bit, because I use it so much. So I like to use a handle, and when I started, the only handles that existed were these ones here, which I quite like. So they're wooden, and the top pulls off, and you slot the needle in like that, and then you push the slot back on, and you've got a little handle like that to hold. Personally, I quite like the wooden ones. You can get these ones that you can store the needle back to front in it, and that just opens up and you sort of push it in with the needle the other way around, and you can get shorter ones and long ones. This is my one. This is a new one. And this is mine that I've used for years now, and it's actually got a really nice patina on it. It's really smooth, and it just feels really nice. So I rather love the wood because it's sort of, you know, it ages quite nicely, and you can see the difference there. This is from years, and I've had this one about, I don't know, 5-6 years or something. I've had this one now, and it does feel really nice. And this has got a 38 in it, and this is the one I use probably 90% of the time. I keep trying new needles, but I tend to just stick to this one needle. And when I first started, I spent probably the first couple of years of working with just this one needle, and I never recommended any other needles. I never thought the need for them, and I thought just working with a single needle was fine. I do have a few that I tend to use now. Now I've discovered some new ones. So a handle can be useful. It's easier to hold, and some people hold it like that. And, you know, you can hold it however you want that works for you. And you can get wooden ones or you can get plastic ones. So there are... Oh, I don't know where I put it. It was right there. Here, you can get things like this that are huge. They're like a whole pen, and that's got a needle in the end then, and it's got a rubber grip. And I think if you've got arthritis or something like this is quite good, because you don't have that fine pressure on your joints there. You can sort of, you know, you could even just sort of hold it, or you could even just strap it to your wrist or something. I broke my shoulder once, and I managed to felt by resting my arm and doing a sort of movement with just my wrist. Not recommended, but there are ways round things. So you can get long handles, and then you can get, if you look here, what I've done is I've got some colour coded ones. So there's black and red and purple and blue, so I know which needle is in which. But to be honest, I hardly ever use them because I use the same needle. And this was my original one, which has also got a nice patina on it. That's got a reverse needle in, which I'll explain to you. This is a clover one that's got 3 in, and you can choose. I've got quite fine needles in there because I find if it's got 3 in a sort of circle, and I find that if you have thicker needles, you can't actually get all 3 in. It's quite brutal, but it's quite good for if you want to do something in one spot, or, you know, if you're trying to shape like under their necks or something like that, that's quite a handy one to do. You can get own brand versions of that because that's quite expensive, and they do these blue plastic. The only difference is it's blue as opposed to pink, and the plastic feels a little bit cheaper quality. So there's an own brand one, and it's a bit harder to get all the needles to fit through it. But I mean, you can get these for like £2, and these are 12, so it's kind of up to you which you want. I buy the cheaper ones for workshops. You can also get ones like this that have got 4 or 6 in for doing, if you were doing a very big area. It's quite good for adding top coats or something, or to speed things up. But to be honest, I rarely use them. I sort of think, that's got 4. Well, that's just got 3 because I broke one. I rarely use them, but I have just bought myself this one for Christmas as a treat, which has got 3 in a row. And it's quite nice. It feels nice. It's nice to hold. I think it will be useful for certain things. Yeah, so you can have lots of needles, you can have one needle, it actually doesn't really matter. And I think everyone has their personal preference. So I can tell you my personal preference, but you might be going, oh my goodness, no, I could never use that one. I must only use this one. So usually the triangle ones have maybe 2 bulbs each side. Stars have got more, so they should felt quicker. But I had a whole packet of needles, and it was a mixture of stars and triangles, and I couldn't tell the difference. I really couldn't. I didn't know which was which. the ones you can feel the difference are the twisted ones, and I'll try and show you now what kind of what's what. So if you look here, these are all 36s, and some are long and some are short. It just depends what brand they are. And then we've got 38s that have got twists and triangles. And can you see the twist here? I think you can see that this has got like a spiral on it. So that's what they mean by twisted. The metal's got like a twist in it. And I'll show you what that does. So you get your needle, and you can use a holder if you want, or you can just use the plain needle. I don't think it matters. And then basically you just poke up and down. Now I've got a little felting pad here, because you need something to lean on. Now maybe I should explain the felting pads quickly. You can choose what you want to use. Some people use foam or a sponge, like a car sponge or something. And if you're starting out and you don't want to spend much money, you can buy a car sponge for 30p, and that will do. So, I mean, this is a piece of upholstery foam, and you can use this to poke into. Now, I have a problem with this in that I started out with it years ago, because that's kind of what I thought you had to use. It makes quite an annoying noise. Some of the ones that are more sort of like polystyrene, they almost squeak, and I'm not very good with that, so I can't bear it. The other problem with the foam is that after a while, little bits it breaks down, and it kind of picks off into your work, and you get like little bits of foam. And some people say, well, you can cover it, you know, with something. Foam is perfectly all right. There's nothing wrong with it. My big issue with foam is that it is appalling for the ecology of this planet, and I'm trying to be as eco as possible. So when this is broken down and you can't use it anymore, you throw it away, and all you can do is put it in landfill, and it will be sat there in hundreds and hundreds of years' time. It'll still be sitting there, and you know, it doesn't biodegrade at all. So I'm not a fan of foam personally, but I know plenty of you are, and you use it, and that's absolutely fine. Of course, that's your own personal preference. The first one I heard about was the Americans talking about these burlap sacks, and I thought, well, that's not going to work, is it? But I tried it, and here's a burlap sack, which is basically Hessian. So double up the Hessian or get a fine weaved one, and this is filled with rice. Now you can sew it on the sewing machine all the way round, or you can get, like, sometimes you can get these little Hessian gift bags, so you just tie it up fill it with rice and tie it really tightly at the end so you don't let the rice out again, and that works quite nicely, and it's quite cheap, nicer noise, much quieter, and it's completely eco. You can compost this when it's done. You can reuse the rice again. I've been reusing the rice for years and years and years now. You can make your own. I've used to make these Hessian ones for work, and I get through quite a few for workshops and things. But recently I've discovered this is a Flock to Felt's little one that I use for workshops. I've got a big one off her that normally fills my desk, so I've taken it off for this. And this is like a very heavy cotton, and she's great because she puts little zips in so you can fill them really easily, and you're not trying to wodge one of those like through your sewing machine with rice spilling out everywhere. For me, it's actually cheaper in terms of time to buy these off Jana than it is to make my own. And actually they're beautiful as well, and I really like the design. She's got little foxes and all kinds of things. So I like these. You can make a dent to keep your eyes or whatever in so they don't fall off. You can mould them so you can get corners. She does, you know, you can get little tiny ones, big ones. So I now use these. I still sometimes use this as well. So a little pad. You can do it on like a folded up towel or something as well. You just want to stop those needles going through your knees because it really hurts. So when you get something to felt, if you have a really thick needle, when you poke it in, this has got like a massive resistance to it, and can you see it's just making like it's actually like denting the wool. It's like pushing the wool in and changing its shape, and it's making like quite big holes, and it's actually quite hard to get. You can feel there's like quite a resistance there. I don't know what this is. This is some random needle that's there. It's probably like a 32 or something. So personally, I wouldn't use one that's that thick. If you look at the 36 ones, it goes in easier. But it's still, it kind of dents it. So if you were trying to be quick, this is quite good because it does things, you know, it will shape things quite quickly. But, you know, you've got all these like little holes. I don't know if you can see there. You can see all these little holes and like lines and dents and things. People always say that you should go in and out vertically, but it's basically you don't want to bend this bit because it snaps. And some people say, you know, quality of needles helps about snapping them. Some says it's how you use them or whatever. I don't care what anybody says, how good or bad you are, or how experienced you are. I've been felting for donkey's years, and here's my needle graveyard in this tin. And I don't know if you can see, there's loads of broken needles, and there's loads of coloured good quality ones, and there's loads of rubbish ones in there as well. I break needles usually when I'm trying to be too quick and I hit wire with them, but you know, you can be careful. There was a lady who came on my workshop 3 or 4 years ago, I think it was now, the first time, and she took one needle home with her, and she's still working with the same needle 3 years later. She's only ever had one needle and she's never broken it. I actually wear needles out now. They start to blunt after a while, which in a way is good because I don't really buy 42 gauge needles. I just use worn out ones because they have the same effect. So 36, you've got triangles and you've got stars. Much of a muchness. They all go in and they sort of dent your work. 36 I would use for like starting off when you're doing like a base shape or something like that, just to get that good lump to start with. 38s are what I used to use all the time. Can you see it's not really making, if I do it on this side, there's no holes now. It's poking the wool in. Doesn't make quite such a loud noise either, so it's a lot finer. There's no resistance there, but it's pushing the fibres in. It would take you a lot longer to felt something with just a 38, but that's a kind of good all-round needle for, you know, if you're only going to get one needle, I'd say get a 38, and you know, you can just poke away there and it'll go in. The 36 is obviously, you can see the shape changes, so you know, the 36 is tougher. The twist one is interesting. I've only recently discovered these ones with the twist on, and they're meant to be that when you push it with the twist, because of that spiral, as it goes in, it like catches the fibres and sort of spins them in as they go. So it's supposed to give you a really smooth surface. I find they actually felt quicker. They seem to give a bit more resistance. So although this is a 38, you can see the holes, can't you, where I've been. So I'm quite liking the twist ones, actually. And to finish off with, if you do it at a slight angle going in, it's sort of, you're supposed to be able to catch in all those stray fibres, so you get a really nice smooth finish, especially if you get a fine one. I think that's how it works. There. You see it's a lot smoother where I've just been. So that's a twisted one. And then you get 40s, which are very fine. I tend to snap these because they're so fine and bendy. I do know people who only want to use 40s. This is a twisted 40, so it's supposed to be very good for finishing off. I mean, you won't get... So if you've got lots of holes and things like that, if you go over with a 40, it'll just... you know, it'll even it all off. You don't get the holes anymore. So, you know, you might want to just do your last final top coat, go over with this. And if you're trying to do like ridiculously fine details, like a little, you know, tiny little mouth or something like that, you know, with just a few stray... I just spiked my finger because I was looking at the picture and not this. You know, this is really super fine, so you can get like just one or two little bits on it there. whereas if you were using a 36, it would probably just, if you did that with the 36, it would just disappear it kind of in. If you did that, it would just, the black would just disappear, actually. It would just poke in. So, you know, it's gone into one little blob. So the higher the number, 36 starting off, 38 general purpose, 40 finishing off. To be honest, I very rarely use a 40. I'm quite liking the 40 twisted one, which is here at the moment. But really, I don't really use them. I tend to use a 38 most of the time. So, you know, if you look at my felting pad, it's got this and this, which is a 36 and a 38, and that's all I use. But like I said, see what works for you. The only other one I wanted to tell you about was a reverse needle, and these are amazing. So these reverse needles, I don't think you can see on here because it's so fine. The barbs run the opposite way, so they pull rather than poke. So what I've done here is I've put some black on white to show you, and hopefully you'll be able to see on this. It pulls the fibres out instead. So if I start doing this, what it's doing is pulling this white out through the black. Can you see? There's white coming through there. So it always reminds me of those highlighter caps you used to get, you know, where they like hook your hair through. So this works back to front. So it pulls the white out. So you've got, you're meant to use them to make fur. So when you do this, it makes things hairy. Yeah, pulls all the fur out, pulls the wool up, so you get like a hairy fur bit. So you can leave it sticking out. To be honest, I don't bother doing that. If I didn't want to make fur, I'll make fur. But what I find it immensely useful for is blending colours. So say, you know, you get those dogs' noses that are white and then that are black, I mean, and then they've got like grey noses. If you pull all this white through and then you get your felting needle and sort of put it all down, I'm afraid this black is so black it's probably the wrong colour to show you. You get grey basically. You can blend the two colours together. So I'm afraid that's not the best to show you, but I find reverse needles really useful for that. So if you've got you know, white, say like here on him, you know, you've got this black and white here, you can pull, you know, I don't want to do too much because but you can sort of pull white through, so you can make little blends. Okay, so that's reverse needles, quite useful. Felting pads, there's loads of people on the Needle Felting UK site that do needles. You know, just take your pick. I personally think they're much of a muchness. I've bought really top quality German ones, and I've snapped them just as easily as I've slapped the cheaper ones. I think it's worth looking for numbers, so you know if you've got you know that you've got a 36 or a 38 or something, because if you get these, you can get these. Somebody gave me some that were like were like this thick, and I mean I don't know what you'd use them for. I mean they wouldn't actually go in the wool, so just be a little bit careful that you're not sold duds. They tend to be cheaper if you buy them in bulk, but some of these companies, you know, all the lovely people that are on you know, that advertise on the needle felting group, most of them I think sell mixed packs. So maybe get a 36, 38, maybe try a twist or a triangle in a star, get a little selection, give them a go and see which one you like. Everybody's got their own personal preference. You don't need them all. If you really you know, if I'm traveling, if I'm going away with my books or something like that, I have a little travel kit. So I take one of these and I take that, and that's it. That's all I take. Sometimes I'll take a 36 as well, but to be honest, you can just get away with that. You just one 38 or something. But like I said, personal preference. Handles are lovely. Some people sell, the lady who does the bags, she paints them really nice colours and things, so you know, you can have fun with that. You can write on them, so like this one, I've written, so it says 40, so I know it's a number 40. My reverse needle did say reverse, but now it's got like a little weird squiggle on, so I know that's the reverse. And you can also get little things to store them in that have like numbers written along them. This is just an old tin I had that I filled with, it's got wool and a bit of something at the bottom, cardboard I think, filled with wool just to keep them safe. Don't leave them lying around on the table like this. It's really bad for them, and it's most likely to get knocked on the floor, and it's most likely to hurt you. So maybe have a spare pad to keep your needles in, or if you've got a big pad like I have normally, you can just keep them around the edge of your pad when you're working, but try not to put them on the floor. And one last thing, if I can find it here, I got this in the garage. It's you know, they do those little adverts for really cheap stuff when you buy your petrol. It's a telescopic magnet, and it's really quite handy for when you break a needle and you can't find the end, or if it's on the floor, because especially if you've got pets, you don't want them treading on one of those. So you can dangle this around and you know, and find the end. I find that quite useful because I'm quite messy, and because I've got my own workshop, you can imagine the state of the floor. I've blabbed on far too much already, so me and the badgers are going to say goodbye. I hope that was some help, but again, I'll put it up, and write questions if I've completely not answered any of your questions, and I'll try and type the answers to them. Okay, bye!